Thousands of people in Australia have fled to the seafront to seek shelter from bushfires racing to the coast. One blaze moved into the Victorian coastal town of Mallacoota, throwing embers towards homes. Locals described a terrifying experience of camping on wharves and boarding boats under blood-red skies. Meanwhile, officials confirmed another 2 people had died in blazes in New South Wales. There are now 12 deaths linked to the nation's bushfire crisis. The beach town where fires turn day to night. Several holiday spots along the coast between Sydney and Melbourne are currently cut off by fire fronts. More than a dozen emergency-level blazes span a 500 kilometers (310 miles) stretch across 2 Australian states, from Batemans Bay in New South Wales (NSW) to Bairnsdale in Victoria. The bodies of 2 men, believed to be a father and son, were found in the town of Cobargo in NSW. A massive blaze had ripped through the town's main street on Tuesday. "Very tragic set of circumstances," said NSW Police Deputy Commissioner Gary Werboys. They were obviously trying to do their best with the fire as it came through in the early hours of the morning. Authorities said there were 5 more people missing in the region, 4 in Victoria and another man in NSW. Victoria's State Premier Daniel Andrews said Navy ships may be called upon to provide food, water and power to the cut-off townships. The main road in the region, the Princes Highway, has been closed off. Some of these isolated communities can be accessed by sea, he said. Authorities had urged people in the region, many of them tourists, to stay put because by Monday it was too late and dangerous to evacuate. The bushfires north of these communities had escalated due to a surge in temperatures, winds, and dry lightning. "We were ready to jump into the water." Residents in the NSW holiday towns of Bermagui and Batemans Bay also fled on Tuesday morning to the waterfront or makeshift evacuation sites near the shore. Locals told they had bunkered in as the front approached, raining ash on the beaches. "It was bloody scary. The sky went red, and ash was flying everywhere," said Zoe Simmons in Batemans Bay. In Mallacoota, one of the worst affected spots on Tuesday, residents fled to the beach or took up shelter in fortified homes when they heard the warning siren go off at 8 o'clock local time. "It should have been daylight but it was black like midnight and we could hear the fire roaring," said David Jeffrey, a local business owner. "We were all terrified for our lives. There's a rock wall that they've built to keep back the sea, and that was where we were going to jump into the water if the radiant heat had hit," he added. The fire swept through the town destroying numerous buildings, but was kept back from the shore by a change in wind, locals said. Firefighters had gathered at the shore as a last line of defense. As the crisis unfolded, Victoria's State Emergency Commissioner Andrew Crisp told reporters there were 4,000 people on the beach. The state's fire service coordinator Steve Warrington said, "It is pitch black, it is quite scary, the community right now is under threat but we will hold our line and they will be saved and protected." He said there had been significant property losses across the entire East Gippsland region in the past days. Searing mid-40s heat combined with strong winds and lightning triggered more than 200 new fires across the state in the past 24 hours. They have fueled the rapid expansion of existing fronts, with several blazes so large they are generating their own thunderstorms and lightning. It is another escalation in the nation's bushfire crisis, which has seen hundreds of massive blazes destroy millions of hectares in the eastern states since September. In total, 12 people have died, among them civilians and 3 volunteer firefighters. Firefighter death: a freakish weather event killed a volunteer firefighter on Sunday, according to the NSW Rural Fire Service (RFS). Powerful winds near the NSW-Victoria border lifted his 10-ton truck off the ground and flipped it over, the service said. Samuel McPaul, 28, was a newlywed who was expecting his first child. 2 other firefighters were also injured and suffered burns. Temperatures exceeded 40 C 104 F in every state and territory at the start of the week, with strong winds and lightning strikes bolstering the flames. Meteorologists say a climate system in the Indian Ocean, known as the dipole, is the main driver behind the extreme heat in Australia. The bushfires ravaging Australia this week have brought warnings of catastrophic danger. Fortunately, no lives were lost on Tuesday, when conditions were at their worst. But experts warned that events looked set to trigger the most dangerous type of bushfire, pyrocumulonimbus, often referred to as a firestorm. These are giant, fast-moving blazes so powerful they create their own weather systems akin to thunderstorms. And due to their ferocity, they are largely impossible to fight. How are firestorms created? With certain ground and atmospheric conditions, bushfires can rip through a large area with so much energy that they generate storms above them. This is a pyrocumulonimbus. Ordinarily, bushfires are driven along by the wind, but a massive blaze can carry so much power that its smoke is not pushed to the side. Instead, it forms a plume that rises up to 15 kilometers (9 miles) into the sky. Because the plume contains heat and moisture, when it hits the stratosphere it can condense and form clouds. A pyrocumulonimbus is basically a thunderstorm within the plume of the fire, says Associate Professor Jason Sharples, an expert in extreme fires based at the University of New South Wales, UNSW. What can they do? When the storm is formed, it means the fire below will be big, fast and very dangerous. That means it's big enough to overcome any other conditions, says UNSW climate scientist Professor Jason Evans. The fire grows in danger because it will carry along the characteristics of a storm, turbulent winds that can send embers shooting off in all directions. Sometimes it can also create its own lightning, which can spark more fires. Despite being a thunderstorm, there is no rain. Instead, the storm sucks in more embers and flings them far ahead of the fire front, so the fire advances in big jumps, says Professor Evans. This makes the fire unpredictable and hard to fight, and multiple fronts emerge. When you get a decent thunderstorm, the rain comes from all directions, says Associate Professor Sharples. Now imagine the same for embers. Fire officials in New South Wales reported that embers were landing 30 kilometers (18 miles) ahead of the front on Tuesday, 3 times more than the usual distance. Can you fight such fires? They are basically uncontrollable at that stage. The only option is to get out of the way, says Professor Evans. With emergency crews able to do little, these fires can die down naturally if they move out of rugged terrain or are deprived of other fuels. The only real way you can stop them is 5 years before they start, said Associate Professor Sharples. Once you get up into the catastrophic level, your fires tend to not obey the usual rules, he said. Are they becoming more common? When the New South Wales bushfires intensified on Friday, some were reported to have produced pyrocumulus clouds. Officials feared one fire on Tuesday was escalating to this level and sent out an alert. Luckily it did not occur. While once seen as fairly rare events, firestorms have become much more common in recent years. They were present in Australia's Black Saturday bushfires in 2009, which killed 173 people. The day Australia saw the gates of hell, Australian experts have tallied close to 60 such events since 2001. A record 18 were recorded in March this year when fires burned in the state of Victoria. They were also seen during fires in Canberra in 2003, when a fire tornado was recorded. There's been a crazy increase in the frequency of these events, says Professor Evans. They are more likely when there are extremely dangerous conditions such as high temperatures, strong winds and little moisture. The likelihood is also increased by the effects of drought. Scientists have predicted that climate change is likely to increase the chances of such events. For now, take care's Femin Allah.